Sup Shredders, my name is Logan, aka Spiderhands, and welcome to an SBRX where today we have ourselves a track from an act named Bonne Finken titled Blood Runs Through Me. And if we switch over to here, we have ourselves a track on the screen here on Music B. This is the art here, Blood Runs Through Me. Apparently this is off of an upcoming album set for release in spring 2026. And we're going to listen through this track from start till finish, and we're going to hear what we think. Let's go, let's do it. I love the panning of the guitars there. It's really interesting how they're...
You danced while the world was falling down. Sunlit smile that shone through mud somehow. No flag, half mast flown high. For a girl whose dreams had died.
It's beautiful.
You stood so tall, living on your knees through vitriol. Still you aim to please, no curtain call. Cuts were much too deep and cuts were made to bleed, and now your blood runs through me.
I mean, it's so tender, but those high range notes are gorgeous.
Time flies and children multiply. Blessed with 10, the Lord let you keep 9. No granite headstone made for a homemade backyard grave. You stood so tall, living on your knees through vitriol. Still you aim to please, no curtain call. Cuts were much too deep and cuts were made to bleed, and now your blood runs through me. Black tar swings in summer breeze. Your blood runs through me. Cigarettes behind the shed. Your blood runs through me. Nowhere to go down gravel run. Your blood runs through me. Your blood runs through me. Your blood runs through me. You stood so tall, living on your knees through vitriol. Still you aim to please.
Sorry to interrupt. I think it's so stellar that we aren't going for the easy route of adding percussion at this point. It can be a tempting thing to add a little bit of extra kind of oomph near the end of a track, but here we're sort of sticking with a lot of the more sort of floaty elements that we have, and there's lots of movement that's interesting rhythmically. It's an interesting decision there.
Curtain call. Cuts were much too deep and cuts were made to bleed, and now your blood runs through me.
I mean, there's just a phenomenal amount of vulnerability there. I'm just going to have a quick listen through the track just to gather a bit more info through the set, like the verse, just to kind of get more of a feel for what it's about. And then we're going to talk about this track more in the conclusion. And so welcome to the conclusion of my review of this track from an act named Bonne Finken titled Blood Runs Through Me. Now, first of all, what do we think this track is about? I get the impression from this after just having a quick listen through it in post, that it could be about someone discussing another who they look up to. They're such a strong, incredible person who is sort of trying to act more like a pillar for another. And they talk about how the cuts bleed and everything like that. And I'm wondering if that person had to go through a lot in order to get them to where maybe to get Bonne Finken to a place where they can do what they are able to do, you know. they're showing their admiration for this person and how they've helped them to grow and sort of develop as a human being. That's my understanding of it on a first listen basis. I think that if I had a bit more time with it, I'd probably be able to get more from it. But I think one of the things that works really well for this track is, from a vocal perspective, not just that we can sing really well, but also the actual choices in terms of expression and layering. So it's clear that Bonne Finken is a talented, skilled vocalist. They're very comfortable in their head and chest voice. There's a range of expression and intensity to the loudness of our voice. We have great volume control. There's moments where we have these wonderful elaborate harmonies there, and they fill the stereo field really neatly, and it's also so delicate at some points. And we also have a bit of kind of sizzle to our tone at some other points as well there. We're just really adept at communicating with the audience. I think that in general the expression is appropriate for the subject matter there. We're showing a bit of vulnerability there, but also it's kind of an earnest performance there where we sound like we're having a genuine conversation with the listener as if they were the person that we're talking about. And I think this is just a conversation that Bonne Finken needed to have. And I think some of the best music is the music where you can almost sort of address things in your past that you might not have been able to get the words for until now, and it just allowing us into their world is really heartfelt and authentic, and it makes for interesting music. I appreciate the angle where they're going for here. There's a bit of darkness there, but things are so sweet instrumentally as well as in terms of the sort of like the beauty of how the upper level kind of harmonies and melodies sort of like coalesce together. I think the instrumental choices here, in terms of how to fix the structure of it, was really good as well. So like we had some really interesting sort of stringed plucked elements there. Like we had like a banjo or something like on the right side, if I'm not mistaken. Then we had the guitars on the left there, steel strings. And I think that having a more gentle approach to those was smart there. We didn't have them symmetrically the entire time or really much of the tracks. I think we had them performing different functions, but I think that made the song more interesting because if things are completely symmetrical, it becomes predictable. Here we're sort of like showing different perspectives going backwards and forths there, different rhythms going between with eighths and then 16th parts there, and sort of changing up the flow and feel of those as we go through the track. It's just really sort of like, it's just really sensible songwriting, to be honest. I'm actually having a listen back to it. It could just be guitars on both sides. They had a very kind of chirpy tone to them. But it wasn't just that we had the guitars playing these major and minor arpeggios and various elements. We had interesting decisions with the strings there. I mean, like, they are an incredibly sort of like emotive instrument there. The lower end of the strings can add a sense of sort of gravity and sort of like weight to a piece there. And because there was a lot of stuff happening in the upper register, when you came in the lower range, it filled out the frequency spectrum really neatly, whilst reinforcing some of the elements of the harmonies or triads in the upper register. And it did so in a way where we wouldn't have, for example, needed a bass guitar or anything like that there. It went for a more sort of like folksy kind of feel to it. It made it a bit more kind of earthy and organic in approach. But then we had like the vocals sort of rise up and the strings and the upper register would rise up as well there. We had a great attention to detail with those things going up and down with the mix there, which I appreciate. It's great to have that sense of connection with the vocals and the instrumental parts. And there was some interesting sort of like starry synths or keys in the ether there. And I just think that there's this sort of a wonderful sort of like tonality to it, that dreaminess there, almost like we're in our own head kind of playing things back and figuring stuff out. But it's also really pretty sounding. It's just a really pretty tone to it. And so you get these different string parts, the guitars, the banjo, like the plucked parts and the keys and everything like that. And you have these vocal melodies and harmonies, and they interact with each other really effectively and efficiently. And so it's like composed in a way which is more sort of like modern with the different verses and choruses and everything like that. But not in a way where it's sort of like overdone or generic there. There's enough variety within the various sort of instrumental layers and the ways they're sort of like stuck together to keep things interesting with a nice sort of like gradual build as we go through the piece there. And overall it's really charming. I think the final note I'll say is that the actual studio production is really, it's sensational. I just like that you can hear the actual sort of like raw tone of the vocals. So there's EQing and reverb tails and stuff, and there's panning, deliberate decisions to sort of widen the backing vocals on the sides there and those sort of higher elements there. But you also get that sort of one-on-one conversation with Bonne Finken as they work things through, like you're talking to them directly. And it's just you have all these other sort of lush elements with the guitars and the plucked elements and the strings and the keys, etc. And you have moments for those to be by themselves. And the mixing and leveling in general is very good. You know, there's no, oh, why is that the level it is, etc. There's no questioning. You just kind of like lulled into like just appreciating it. And because there is dynamic range, but it's also nice and loud, it's just commercial grade in terms of the approach to it. I think it's just a blessing that Bonne Finken can just really sing as well. You know, it's just a really wonderful performance, and it was captured really well on tape. And you didn't need to fix things in post because they clearly could play their instruments, and it was just really well fleshed out. So ultimately, that's my quite positive review, I think, of this track from the next time Bonne Finken. The song titled Blood runs through me, and hopefully you enjoyed it. And if you did, please go check this out via their various social medias and their website. I'm sure this will be released on digital stream platforms as of September 5th. If I'm not mistaken, I think this goes out on September 5th. And stay cool, stay safe. Please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as they need the help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world. And I'll catch you in the next SP Reacts. Spiderhands out.